The South's economy was collapsing, its soil was dying, and its farmers were desperate. Cotton had bled the land dry. Nothing would grow anymore. The whole system was falling apart. But one man, a black scientist born into slavery, walked in with a sack of sweet potatoes and said, "Let's fix this." This is the story of George Washington Carver, the genius who outsmarted an entire economic system with vegetables. They tried to reduce him to the peanut man, but he was so much more. He was a scientist, an artist, an environmentalist before environmentalism existed. By the end of this video, you'll understand how a formerly enslaved man became one of the most important scientists in American history, and how he did it by making racists look foolish with vegetables. Setting the stage. To understand Carver's genius, you first need to understand the mess he walked into. After the Civil War, the South had one love: cotton. They planted it everywhere, year after year after year. But cotton was like an abusive relationship. It drained the soil dry, and when it left, it took everything with it. Cotton sucks nitrogen out of the soil. And without nitrogen, nothing else will grow. Simple as that. The South had literally destroyed its own land. Farmers were trapped. They needed cotton to make money, but cotton was killing their farms. It was a death spiral. Carver saw this coming. Years before most people even understood what was happening, he wrote, "The farmer who raises cotton year after year soon finds himself unable to make a living." Enter Tuskegee Institute. Founded by Booker T. Washington in 1881, it was one of the few places where Black Americans could get a real education. Washington had a vision: teach practical skills, build economic independence, and prove that Black excellence couldn't be denied. He needed someone to run the agricultural department, someone brilliant, someone who could solve the South's farming crisis. He found George Washington Carver. The genius emerges. George Washington Carver was born into slavery, probably in 1864. Nobody kept exact records of enslaved babies. When he was just a baby, he and his mother were kidnapped by Confederate raiders. His mother was never seen again. Moses Carver, the man who had enslaved his mother, went searching. He only found George. After emancipation, Moses and Susan Carver raised George as their own. They saw something special in him. The kid was obsessed with plants. Neighbors called him the plant doctor. At 10 years old, he was already solving agricultural problems that stumped grown men. But he couldn't go to the local school. He was Black. That was the rule. So he walked 10 miles to the nearest town that would let a Black child learn the alphabet. Imagine that dedication, when most of us can't walk 10 feet without checking our phones. He didn't just go to school, he dominated. First Black student at Iowa State. Bachelor's degree, master's degree. The man was brilliant. His professors begged him to stay. They wanted him to get a PhD to teach at Iowa. But then he got a letter from Booker T. Washington. "Come to Tuskegee. Your people need you." Carver could have had a comfortable life in the North. Good pay, recognition, safety. But he chose to go south, into the heart of Jim Crow, to help farmers who looked like him. In 1896, George Washington Carver arrived at Tuskegee as head of the agriculture department. He was 32 years old, and he was about to change everything. The revolution begins. Carver looked at the South's soil and saw a problem nobody else could solve. The land was exhausted, dead. Farmers didn't know what to do. But Carver understood something fundamental about how nature works. Soil isn't just dirt, it's a living ecosystem. Cotton sucks nitrogen out of the soil, back into the soil. Then plant cotton the next year. The cotton grows better, alternate, rotate. Simple. But farmers weren't convinced. "We don't want peanuts. We need cotton money." So Carver got creative. If farmers were going to grow peanuts, he'd make sure peanuts were profitable. He invented over 300 uses for peanuts: milk, flour, dyes, soap, cosmetics, oil, even fuel. The man turned a humble legume into an industrial revolution. And he did the same with sweet potatoes, 118 different products. Suddenly, poor soil turned rich, and the South started growing something more valuable than cotton: hope. But Carver didn't just work in a lab. He took his knowledge to the people. He created the Jessup wagon, basically a mobile school. He'd drive to remote farms and teach poor farmers practical science. for free. He showed them how to compost, how to rotate crops, how to make their own fertilizer. He didn't lecture. He showed them. Got his hands dirty. Carver once said, "It is simply service that measures success." He could have been rich. He could have patented his inventions. But he gave it all away. Because his goal wasn't wealth, it was liberation. And it worked. Within years, farms across the South were recovering. The land was healing. And black farmers especially were finding a way to survive and even thrive. How he outsmarted racism. But let's be clear about the world Carver was operating in. This was the Jim Crow South. Black people couldn't vote, couldn't eat in certain restaurants, could be lynched for looking at someone the wrong way. Carver had to be brilliant and diplomatic. He couldn't just be right. He had to make white people feel comfortable with the fact that he was right. Southern politicians would invite him to speak about agriculture. They needed his knowledge. Their farms were failing without it. But they wouldn't sit beside him at meals. He'd teach them how to save their farms, and then he'd have to eat in a separate room. Because racism makes no sense. In 1921, Carver testified before Congress about peanut tariffs. He was only given 10 minutes to speak. He spoke for over an hour. They were so fascinated they kept extending his time. A black man, in 1921, holding Congress spellbound. The media ate it up. Suddenly, this quiet scientist from Alabama was famous nationwide. Carver once said, "When you can do the common things of life in an uncommon way, you will command the attention of the world." And that's exactly what he did. He was basically outsmarting racists with vegetables. While they called him names, he called out soil science. And in the end, guess who had the whole South begging for peanut lessons? But here's the key. Carver never compromised his integrity. He didn't bow. He didn't beg. He simply proved, over and over, that excellence cannot be denied. If you're liking this content and you want to help us continue to put out videos like this, please leave a subscribe. These are the stories they don't teach in schools, and your support helps us keep uncovering them. What would you have done in Carver's position? Comment below. Beyond peanuts. Let's clear something up. Textbooks love to call Carver the Peanut Man, like he ran a snack stand or something. They reduce his genius to a cute story about a nice black man who liked peanuts. But this man created over 300 peanut-based inventions, from dyes to fuel to plastics. He literally reinvented Southern agriculture. He was Tesla before Tesla. He was a chemist, a botanist, an inventor, a painter. Yes, his artwork was exhibited nationally. A musician, and a deeply spiritual man. But the media loved the simple story. Look at the nice black man with his peanuts. It was easier to digest than, look at this genius who's revolutionizing multiple scientific fields. And let's be honest about why. A brilliant black scientist threatened people, so they turned him into a caricature, made him safe, digestible, non-threatening. But the receipts are there. The scientific papers, the innovations, the testimony. You can't erase genius, even if you try to simplify it. Carver understood what was happening. He once said, "Fear of something is at the root of hate for others, and hate within will eventually destroy the hater." He saw through it all. The legacy. Carver's impact went way beyond peanuts and sweet potatoes. He was pioneering concepts that wouldn't become mainstream for another century. Before green energy was a buzzword, Carver was already doing it. Composting, recycling, sustainability, renewable resources. All before it was cool. He saw nature as sacred. He believed science and faith weren't enemies. They were partners in understanding creation. He said, "I love to think of nature as an unlimited broadcasting station through which God speaks to us every hour." At Tuskegee, he mentored hundreds of black students, taught them not just to follow instructions, but to think, to question, to innovate. His students went on to become scientists, teachers, and leaders themselves. The ripple effect of his teaching can't be measured. And here's something wild. Henry Ford and George Washington Carver became close friends. Ford was obsessed with biofuels and plant-based materials. He saw Carver as a genius ahead of his time. They collaborated on research. Ford even built Carver a laboratory. In the 1930s, a white industrialist and a black scientist, genuine friends. It wasn't just rare, it was revolutionary. Today, Carver's principles are everywhere. Crop rotation is standard practice. Biofuels are a growing industry. Sustainable agriculture is the future. Modern environmental scientists point to Carver as a pioneer. The man was doing permaculture before we had a word for it. George Washington Carver died on January 5th, 1943. He was around 79 years old. Still, nobody knew his exact birth date. He died with less than $1,000 to his name because he'd given everything away: his inventions, his knowledge, his time. They tried to make him the peanut guy. But George Washington Carver was a scientist, an artist, a theologian, and a quiet revolutionary. He didn't just grow crops, he grew possibility. He proved that genius has no color, that innovation can come from anywhere, that one person with knowledge and determination can change the world. He once said, "How far you go in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and strong. Because someday in your life, you will have been all of these." His legacy isn't just in the soil or the products, it's in the lesson. Excellence cannot be denied, no matter how much they try to reduce you, simplify you, or erase you. If you're undeniably brilliant, the world has to acknowledge it. Today, schools teach about the peanut man. But now you know the truth. You know about the genius who outsmarted an entire system with vegetables, the man who turned oppression into innovation. What other simplified Black historical figures should we uncover? Comment your suggestions. If you learned something new today about George Washington Carver, hit that subscribe button. We're digging up the full stories, not the simplified versions they teach in textbooks. Share this with someone who needs to know that Black excellence in science isn't new. It's been here all along. And if you want to learn about more Black inventors whose stories got buried, watch our next video about the patents that were stolen and the names that were erased. George Washington Carver, born into slavery, died a legend. They tried to reduce him to peanuts, but his genius is eternal. He said it best: "It is not the style of clothes one wears, neither the kind of automobile one drives, nor the amount of money one has in the bank, that counts. These mean nothing. It is simply service that measures success."